Married yesterday. Congrats to him. I'm going to be flying solo on this one. We've got ourselves another fun, interesting Thursday night football game. Titans going into Pittsburgh against the Steelers. This is a 37 total, man. This is going to be kind of interesting. Let's hit it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, flying solo today. Titans versus the Steelers, Thursday night football. Steelers -3 favorites at home. Let's just jump right into this. No messing around, no chit chat today. I'm going to jump right into the Vegas lines here. So it looks like we've got some injury news that has come out this morning, thankfully, in regards to DeAndre Hopkins. Looks like he's going to play. We'll get into more injury information here in a minute. But like I said earlier, -3 home favorites. It's a 37 total. 57% of the money coming in on Tennessee. The question mark is Will Levis here, right? Had a great week last week. Threw for 4 touchdown passes. 3 of those went to DeAndre Hopkins. So the question here is, can he replicate even like half of that? Rookie quarterback coming in against a not so great defense, but also their pass rush looks pretty good this year, obviously. The biggest question is, can Will Levis put up some yards in the air? They scored 28 points last week, which is the most they've scored since 2021. So obviously it's a big boost here, but is this a situation where as he gets more games under his belt, as he gets more film for people to watch and analyze, are they going to be able to shut him down a little bit? In this case, look, I think that the Titans in this matchup, I kind of like them in this particular matchup. The biggest question mark is who is going to benefit the most in the air. DeAndre Hopkins was questionable. Looks like he's going to play in this game, but he's really expensive, which kind of worries me. He's going to need at least a touchdown in a 100-yard game, most likely to pay off that salary. He's in, the Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill world when it comes to his price this week. So something to think about as we're going along here. When it comes to this matchup, some of the things to talk about here is Tennessee is 6th, according to PFF, rushing grade. So we know they're going to get involved on the ground. We know Derrick Henry is probably going to get 20 attempts. Now, obviously, if they're down in this game, you might not see as much Derrick Henry. But recently, we've seen him get involved out of the backfield in the passing game, which is good. And same on the other side with Najee Harris, by the way. He's been getting involved a little bit more, which makes Najee Harris more interesting. But that matchup there is 6th ranked rush offense going up against the 20th ranked run defense, according to PFF. Another interesting thing to talk about here is Tennessee is 12th passing grade. They're just ahead of the Chargers and 1 behind Seattle, which is surprising to me. Now, I'm sure last week helped that, but it seems like they could have some success in the air. Even though Pittsburgh's defense, they're getting a 21st ranked in coverage. But with the rise of Joey Porter Jr., we've seen a little bit better results from them lately. But still, this is not a good defense per se. And I think you can throw the ball on this team. In addition, on the other side, Kenny Pickett looks like he's going to start in this game. Looks like you've got a pass funnel defense that you could really throw the ball on going up against this Titans defense. The one narrative here that we obviously need to talk about is this pathetic Steelers offense. Matt Canada, to me, is I don't know how he's still around. If he actually is able to change a little bit with the times, introduce some more motion, be less predictable on 1st and 2nd down. There's a great video by Brett Coleman out there that he released, I believe, yesterday. Great video talking about this offense. Check that out on YouTube. But my worry here is this is another 20-17 matchup. And we got to kind of figure out who's going to take over in this game. These lower scoring games can be harder to figure out for sure. with the quarterbacks pricing in this particular matchup, both quarterbacks are very viable when it comes to their pricing. They're both in the 9Ks. So, double quarterback lineups are, in my opinion, are more valuable on a lower total game because those quarterbacks are touching the ball every single time. And if you get a rushing touchdown, if you get a quarterback sneak at any of these guys, you might need them in the optimal, even if they score 13 or 14 fantasy points. So something to think about before we get into building. When it comes to the overall here, with this matchup, looks like, according to last week, for the Steelers side of things, George Pickens was on the field a lot. Deontay Johnson's back. He got 14 targets. Pretty interested in getting him involved. Connor Hayward, as the tight end with Freiermuth out, is on the field. He's just not getting involved a ton in the pass game. Allen Robinson is the clear slot guy. Calvin Austin's been kind of taking a back seat to that, even though I think probably Calvin Austin is the better option here. But they're playing Allen Robinson. He's getting a lot of reps in the slot. You see Najee Harris here and Jaylen Warren pretty much splitting that role. We'll talk about them in a little bit. I think they're both in play. Jaylen Warren is clearly the better pass option and probably the better option overall. But recently, Najee Harris has been getting involved a little bit more in that pass game. And on Draftkings, we definitely want to take advantage of that. Pittsburgh's 4-0 when they throw for over 200 yards. So if Pickett could come out and throw the ball a little bit, this team probably has a pretty good chance of winning. Pittsburgh's defense is giving up 4.4 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Good news for Derrick Henry. I think if he gets you 20 carries in this game, you can probably count on that 100-yard rushing bonus, as well as if he gets in the end zone, you're probably going to need him potentially at captain just because of the volume that he provides. They didn't trade him. They want to keep him around for a young quarterback to take some of that pressure off him. I think it's a smart move. On the other side here, we're seeing this offense is ranked 13th, Titans wise. And let me move this to the other side here. Get some Antonio Brown talking shit about Matt Canada, because apparently Antonio Brown is healthy enough to be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, apparently. Titans defense last week had 6 sacks against Atlanta, going up against a bad Steelers offensive line when it comes to defending the pass rush. So that's something to keep in mind. If the Titans defense can get some pressure onto Pickett, this could turn into an interesting game where you might want to stack up some defenses. We could see some turnovers in this one. Levis obviously came in last week and got the start. So Okonkwo, 72% of the snaps. He's got a decent matchup on paper. His price is nice. I think you got to think about him this week. He didn't on the box score light it up, but he had some opportunities downfield. I think one pass he got overthrown. He was wide open. D-Hop crushed last week, 63% of the snaps. Treylon Burks is working back into this offense, 51% of the snaps. Now, Nick Westbrook-Akine, him and Burks are splitting that outside role. To me, it feels like Burks is in a spot to be worked back in. He's been out since week 3. Last week he came in, didn't really do much, but I feel like as of now, we're going to see him maybe slide into maybe 60% of the snaps. This is just a pure guess to me, but as he starts to get back in game shape, you will see more of him, which to me, Westbrook-Akine, I know he had a nice 33-yard touchdown last week, but he only had 2 targets. That was his only catch. And to me, he feels like a guy that is going to be over-owned because of the box score last week. Nick Westbrook-Akine is a potential fade if you believe that Treylon Burks is going to get more of the opportunity. A guy like Kyle Phillips now seems like he's taken over in the slot role. So this offense is pretty concentrated to a couple of guys here. And I think if Treylon Burks gets more involved, I think he's a good play at his price and potentially a good play at captain because of his big play upside down the field. 34 degrees this morning when I took this screenshot. It's probably going to be in the low 40s for this game, so nothing too crazy, but a cold game. We're on week 8 now, man. We're starting to get through this season. A cold game, who's that going to benefit? Well, that's going to benefit a big ass dude like Derrick Henry, most likely. So if they can get the lead in this game, Derrick Henry is in a great damn spot. All right, let's get to injuries here. Let's just skip right to injuries.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So the news has come out that DeAndre Hopkins should play tonight. Keep an eye on that. We never know what could happen, but it looks like he's going to be good to go. Obviously, looks like Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be out for this one, which is kind of a big deal, especially when it comes to guys like Okonkwo potentially getting some more opportunities down the field. So keep an eye on the injuries for tonight. We'll see kind of where that goes as inactives come out. But the biggest news here is clearly Hopkins. If he plays, that's obviously huge. We're going to want to get some pieces on him. But like I said, his price is just so heavy that there's an opportunity that even if he just has a average game, he's not going to make the optimal because of that price. So something to think about. If Hopkins is out, huge boost to Treylon Burks, huge boost to Nick Westbrook-Akine. Those guys take over on the outside. So keep an eye on that. Make sure you guys join that Discord. We're going to obviously be talking about injuries as we get closer to lock, and I'll be building sort of my single entry build for the YouTube members in the private YouTube chat in there, but the overall Discord is free, so be sure to join that. All right, let's get into this breakdown here. Let me bust this out. You guys will have to work with me here a little bit. Doing a solo show is a little different, so trying to produce and talk and all that stuff. Let's do it. Let's get into this breakdown. Break it down. All right, so Kenny Pickett is 9,200. Will Levis is 9,600. Like I was saying in the opening, I feel like these guys are priced well. You know, with a low total like this, you're probably expecting to play one quarterback maybe. To me, I feel like you could jam both of these guys in there. Especially a guy like Kenny Pickett going up against this Tennessee defense, have some success in the air. If Matt Canada can do anything and just progress with the times a little bit, add some motion in, stop being so predictable on second down like Brett Coleman was saying in that video, they're going to have a little bit more success. Will Levis, 9,600, dude, I mean, if he can come out and even throw for 2 touchdowns in this matchup, he's a solid play. 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're going to probably want to have him in your flex at minimum. So to me, both quarterbacks are in play. I like their price. They're cheap enough that, you know, you see them getting a 13, 14 point projection here based on the contest sims as well as the sims for big tournaments. I'm getting to a ton of both of these guys. Not as much as in the captain spot, but in the flex, I feel like I'm running into plenty of 2 quarterback builds. Let's go over to running backs here. Let's start with Tennessee. So Derrick Henry's 11.6K. He's expensive, but because of this offense, if you think that this offense can put up 20 points, I just don't know if I'm going to be able or if I'm going to want to fit Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins into the same lineup. It's definitely possible, and you're probably going to capture a lot of the offense. But is there enough to go around at that price tag? Derrick Henry has been getting plenty of games over 20 rushing attempts. Like I said earlier, he's been getting involved a little bit more in the pass attack. So if he can get, 3 receptions out of the backfield for 10 yards and get you 100 yards on 20 carries, the key here is the touchdown, whether or not he's going to be needed in the captain spot. Tyjae Spears, 5,400, another good option. I'm not avoiding him. Doesn't look like he's popping much in the sims here. But at 5,400, if this team gets down, you could see some more opportunities from him in the pass game. And all it takes is a couple dump-offs in the fourth quarter to get him to like 10 fantasy points. But I'm more interested in Derrick Henry in this matchup, both at captain, in the flex. He'll probably be one of my highest owned players in the entire slate because it's a damn good matchup for him. And he's getting the volume. Like I said, this offense is pretty concentrated amongst 4 or 5 different players. Go to the other side here. Pittsburgh. So obviously Najee Harris is 7,200. Jalen Warren, 6,400. This is the big question. Which guy do you play? I think you could probably play a little bit of both. Najee, let me pull this up here. So Najee Harris, you start to see, let me actually switch over here real quick. So you start to see a trend of getting more receptions, more targets. So last week he had 5 receptions for 42 yards, which was actually more than Jalen Warren, 4 receptions, 19 yards. You're starting to see him getting more involved. But if you look at his carries are trending down. Game 1, 19, he had 14 carries across the board earlier this season, and now he's at 7 carries. So the big question here, man, who the hell do we play? I think both of them are in play. I don't have a massively bold take on either of these guys, but I think sprinkle in Najee Harris at 7,200. It's an interesting price. If he gets in the end zone, that's huge for him. Jalen Warren, 6,400. I don't mind playing both of these guys together potentially too. If this pass offense can't get it going, a lot of the volume will come from these guys, but it's not sexy overall. If you look at their value, they're both at 1.49. Feels like getting to both of these guys at a fair amount is probably the way to go. They're probably right around 30% owned in the flex. So I don't hate either of these guys. Let's go to wide receiver for the Steelers. So Deontay Johnson's back. 8,400. George Pickens, 8,800. This team really does not distribute the ball across the field very evenly. They like to go to the outside of the field. If you look at the best offenses, if you watch that Brett Coleman video, you'll see they're not really getting the ball across the middle of the field much at all, which is really limiting their offense. They're forced to just kind of force it out there on these one-on-ones and these big plays with George Pickens, and those are low. Even George Pickens is like a 60 or like a 70-30 type guy when it comes to jump balls. He's not going to be successful every single time. Allen Robinson is firmly cemented himself into the slot there. He's getting most of those snaps. He's on the field a decent amount. He's 2,200. Calvin Austin, to me, with Deontay Johnson back, is a potential play. He's $1,800, so there's decent value there. We know he's got big upside if he's on the field. I just don't see him being on the field much. So Deontay Johnson, to me, is one of these guys that you can throw at captain. We know about George Pickens. He's a big play guy. He had a touchdown last week again. So I think all of these dudes are involved as far as Johnson and Pickens. I'm not a huge fan of Allen Robinson in this matchup, even though he's $2,200. So you might need him when it comes to value, but there's some other value that we could talk about here on the other side. Play Deontay Johnson, play George Pickens, both at the captain spot, both in the flex. I think those guys, at least one of them will be involved. I don't know if you need two of them, but if you do get two of them, you might want to consider getting Kenny Pickett in, at least in the flex or at captain. But Deontay Johnson is the kind of guy that can get you there, get you 15 fantasy points without even scoring a touchdown based on his targets. So the other side here, DeAndre Hopkins is 11.2K. He's questionable. He's getting up there in age. He had a huge game last week, but look, he had 4 catches for 3 touchdowns. That first one was Levis just tossed the ball up to him. The last one was the most impressive one. He really, he did a little double move. He went inside, then cut it outside and completely faked out that safety. That was a sick play. But that first one was just kind of he just kind of tossed it up. Am I saying that DeAndre Hopkins got lucky? No, I'm not. He's a good player. We all know that. But DeAndre Hopkins, to me, is in a situation where his price tag requires him to score another touchdown and get you 60, 70 yards at minimum with that price at 11.2K. He is a potential fade option. I'm not going out of my way to not play him. But a guy like Treylon Burks at 3,800, I know he's working his way back into this offense. And he's been out since week 3, so it might take him a couple games, but he's a big play, down the field kind of guy. Westbrook-Ikine at 3,400, I think there's going to be a lot of ownership going to him simply because of that one play last week. Only 2 targets, 1 reception, or I'm sorry, 2 receptions. No, it was 1 reception. Yeah, he only had 1 reception in the game, 2 targets. He's 3,400. To me, that's a fade option in this game. If Treylon Burks actually is feeling up to it and feeling healthier, they're going to try to get him involved over NWI. So you could see about 15 to 20% of ownership come in on Westbrook-Ikine just simply because of that touchdown last week, and he wasn't on the field really as much. He wasn't getting as much opportunities. Kyle Phillips at $800 seems to be taking over this slot role. He's a really interesting play at $800. I'm very interested in him. Chris Moore as well, like probably not as much because we're seeing Kyle Phillips kind of fit into that role a little bit more. At least on the depth chart, we're seeing Kyle Phillips be that guy. DeAndre Hopkins, though, and Treylon Burks are competing. Basically, Nick Westbrook-Ikine is competing snaps with those 2 guys. So if you feel like Treylon Burks can get you 60 or 70% of the snaps, Westbrook-Ikine is a fade potential for me. And Treylon Burks, man, 3,800. Throwing him at captain in a couple of tournament lineups is a very appealing situation because we know his big playability. And, Joey Porter Jr., it has been looking pretty good, but he's not going to specifically be on one guy. If we look at this, we've got basically Joey Porter Jr. Since he's come on, we're seeing him in the left cornerback spot, pretty much playing aside. Patrick Peterson, the old man, still got it kinda, but we've seen him get burned in the past. We've also seen him get a couple interceptions. He's mainly playing on that right cornerback spot. And if you look at the snaps for DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks last week and just overall, they're pretty much going between left and right. So there's no single matchup here. Whoever ends up being guarded by Joey Porter is probably the lesser of the matchup, but that's going to change throughout the game quite a bit. Kyle Phillips is in the slot. And if you look at the other side, it's a similar situation. Based off of the snap counts and everything like that, according to PFF, it looks like Christian Fulton is the right cornerback, Sean Murphy-Bunting, the left cornerback, 27th ranked cornerback out of 116 is Sean Murphy-Bunting. But like I said, this is a defense that will give up points to the wide receivers, will give up a lot of pass yards. So Kenny Pickett's in a good spot in this matchup. If you're going to ever play Kenny Pickett and you're going to ever stack up multiple Steelers in the pass game, this might be the matchup to do it. Let's go to tight end here. So we've got Chig Okonkwo, 4,200. I think he's in a good spot, man. I really do. His price tag is looking nice. He's $4,200. Throwing him in at one or two captain spots potentially, but would I rather pay up for the kickers a little bit? Maybe. But Okonkwo, although he hasn't really absolutely crushed this year, I think one way to get your rookie quarterback confidence and take some pressure off of him is to utilize a guy like Chig Okonkwo down the field, as well as in some screen passes and some short plays to him. I'm hoping that Chig Okonkwo can get at least 5-6 targets at this salary, because I think he's a good play from there. Let's go to the other side. Pittsburgh. Look, Connor Hayward, 2,800. I call him Cam Hayward. I don't know why. 2,800. I don't know, man. 2,800. I feel like he's probably an okay play. Darnell Washington is clearly the guy when it comes to blocking, but he's got like one target this year. I was kind of higher on him, going into the season. But it looks like Connor Hayward is the guy, obviously, with Freiermuth out. I'm not super interested in him. I just don't think he's going to get involved as much, but he's getting a decent projection at about 6 fantasy points. So I feel like his ownership is going to be, maybe upwards of 30%, because he's one of these guys who's on the field a lot. He's getting a good median projection at 2,800. I don't mind him, but I'm not going to go out of my way to play him. Kickers and defense. This is an interesting one. So let me get both teams in on here. Boswell, 5K. Nick Folk, 4,600. We're seeing these kickers priced up for whatever reason. I think DraftKings is just trying to mix it up a little bit, create some more unique lineups, because what seems to happen is you get to these slates where there's a lot of expensive players. You end up getting to a $3,800 kicker at 30% owned or 25% owned in a lot of situations. This is a 37 total. So the Steelers defense is 5,600. The Titans defense is 4,400. Now we've talked about this many times. Steelers defense and popular defenses in general, especially over 5K and in this 5,600 range, we see it a lot. They're probably going to be 30% owned in the flex, probably 10% owned in the captain. They're going to have to score a touchdown, or they're going to have to get 4 or 5 sacks to really pay that off and pay off that ownership. But with a low total game like this, and two teams that are big question marks, especially a rookie quarterback, the Steelers get that pass rush going, man, against that offensive line. You could see 3 or 4 sacks. You could see a fumble, pick six, a scoop and score. You have to consider playing the Steelers defense, but if you want some quick leverage over the field, whether it's stupid or not, being under on the Steelers defense is an option, in my opinion. Now, what I'll probably do is in the single entry, I'll probably play some Steelers defense potentially. We'll have to kind of figure that out. But playing Steelers defense potentially there, but I'm more likely to maybe be under the field. We'll see how things go as we get closer. Boswell and Nick Folk are options in this game. It's a 37 total. If both of these guys get 2 field goals, one 40-yarder and a 30-yarder, that could be enough. Although there's some players in this range that I would rather just pay down to get to because of the upside, but you're going to have to get to some kickers most likely on this slate. All right, so for captain, I don't have a graphic for this one, but let's just hit it.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
So for me, there's a couple captain options. Clearly, you're looking at guys like DeAndre Hopkins, pass catchers, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I think both quarterbacks are potential. Will Levis at captain is a potential on this slate. But to me, a guy like Derrick Henry is probably the way I'm going. Even Jaylen Warren or Najee Harris potentially at captain. But if you look at Deontay Johnson with the amount of targets he's getting, I think that's probably the way I'm going. As we get closer here, I'll be building a single entry, like I said, in the Discord and posting that in the private YouTube channel in there. But we'll also obviously be in the NFL, the free channel, chatting it up as we get closer. So fades.
We couldn't do diddly poo.
So to me, there's a couple options for fades. Nick Westbrook-Akine, which, look, I don't think he's going to be super high owned, but, you know, if you could beat out 15 to 20% ownership on him simply because he had a bigger week last week, and as Treylon Burks gets more involved, we're going to see less of Nick Westbrook-Akine. He's a potential fade option. And shit, I'll be honest with you, man. I do think that a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is a potential fade. He's banged up a little bit. His price is so high and his ownership is going to be so high because he's a name. Even if he comes out with 5 receptions for 60 yards and he doesn't get in the end zone, that's not going to pay off that price. I don't believe he's going to end up in the optimal. So those are a couple options. You could also fade the Steelers defense. It's scary though, because if that defense, all it takes is one play to ruin your night if you don't have that defense in. So there's some guys when it comes to basically leverage plays. I haven't made my decision as far as where I'm going yet. I'm going to wait till we get later, but I'll probably be with the field on DeAndre Hopkins. I'll probably be under the field on Nick Westbrook-Akine, potentially not even playing him at all. And then what I'll probably do is play Steelers defense in my single entry and be under the field in my tournaments. All right, let's build some lineups together here. Let's bust this open. Let's go over to Draftkings. So there's a 500,000 maker here. Let's start with this is going to be a little bit different. I'm used to bouncing off ideas with Ellie, but you can see he's not here today. So let's try this on my own and let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's start with Derrick Henry, a captain, see how difficult or easy this is to build. We're gonna want high floor lineups. We don't have to hit the nuts on a single entry, especially if you're doing the $50 or $100. You don't have to get perfect. You just want to have a higher floor with some high upside in the captain spot. So let's do both quarterbacks here. Let's plug both the guys in right off the bat. It feels like to me we got to get at least one of Pickens or Johnson. I'm going to go Johnson since he's a little bit cheaper, Deontay Johnson. That obviously leaves out DeAndre Hopkins in this situation. We can't even afford the Steelers defense here. So you got to go down to guys like Treylon Burks. There's Allen Robinson. There's Chig Okonkwo. To me, I feel like I'm going to jam in. Where's he at? $600. Phillips, $800. I'm going to jam in Phillips right off the bat here. I think he's going to be on the field a decent amount. At $800, you really need like 6-7 fantasy points out of him, and you could probably be okay. And then let's get the kicker. Was it York or Folk? Hang on a second. Who is the kicker? Let me just make sure. Looks like Folk. Oops. So Nick Folk, let's get him in there. This is okay. So Henry, Levis, Pickett, Deontay Johnson, Phillips for your value, and then you got a field goal kicker at Tennessee. It's a 4-2. So as you can see, if you get both quarterbacks and Henry at captain, you're not going to be able to play DeAndre Hopkins. So let's try something different. I actually kind of like the way we're going here, but let's try to get a cheaper captain with both stud Titans in the flex. So where can we go? Let's go Deontay Johnson at captain here. Let's go Henry, Hopkins. Can we do Levis and Pickett? Nope, we can't. So Henry Hopkins in the same lineup together is going to cause trouble. Now, if you want to go heavy like 4-2 or 5-1 Tennessee stacks, well, you're probably okay to do that. If we're doing a little bit more balanced builds, I feel like I'm going to avoid Henry and Hopkins in the same lineup to a certain extent, simply just because of their price. I just don't see Hopkins paying that off. He absolutely could come out and have another big game. I'd rather play Derrick Henry in this matchup, so let's keep him off. Let's go with Levis, Pickett. So we've got a 2-2 going on here so far. So in this situation, I don't know if I want to get to the Steelers defense. Let's try it though. 1,400, and then you got Kyle Phillips. So this is an interesting build here. This might not be a single entry, but it's close. Deontay Johnson captain with Henry, Levis, Pickett, Steelers defense, Kyle Phillips. Let's build some tournament lineups. Let's build a Hopkins tournament lineup here at captain. Let's do a game script where the Titans put up 28 points and the Steelers end up with a below average day, which for them is probably just an average day with scoring like 14 points. So if that's the case, if I got Hopkins in the captain spot, I'm going to want to put Derrick Henry in. If they're in the lead, they're going to utilize Derrick Henry. Probably want to get Will Levis in here, and now we're looking at some interesting stuff. So who's the one or two guys I want to get from the Steelers? Well, do we want to get a kicker in here for the Steelers? Let's just throw Boswell in right away. A guy like Jaylen Warren potentially. I mean, look, if I had to choose one, and then maybe we punt, I'm probably going Deontay Johnson or George Pickens, especially with this particular game script. But for now, let's just plug Deontay Johnson in because he's a little cheaper. And now you're starting to see where we're getting at here. Allen Robinson. We can't get to any of the kickers. So let's just say if I go Kyle Phillips, and feel free to use any punt guy that you're comfortable with. But it seems like Kyle Phillips will be one of these more popular dudes on the lower end, even though he hasn't really done much this year. That leaves us with Hayward, Robinson. So this is not ideal, but you got a 4-2 here with Deontay Johnson and Allen Robinson. That's mainly PPR points there, what you're looking at. So this isn't feeling good with DeAndre Hopkins at captain. Another reason why I'm kind of like, man, I'd rather just play Henry. Let's go with George Pickens captain. Let's do a 2-4 here. Pickens and Pickett together, and then let's run it back with 4 Tennessee guys. So let's fade Henry in this lineup. Let's go DeAndre Hopkins. I know we talked a decent amount about Treylon Burks. We'll get him involved here in a second, but let me throw Treylon Burks in here. Now, we can't get to Tajay Spears. We can't really get to anybody that we're interested in. So Kyle Phillips comes into play here in this last spot. You leave a couple bucks on the table, or you go to the other side and you get Hayward or Robinson. So that's what we're looking at here. Pickens, Pickett. You got four run backs here with Levis, Hopkins, Burks, Phillips. Let's do our Treylon Burks build at captain and see what that does for us. This feel like you really need one big catch out of him at captain with that price tag. If he gets you a big reception for a touchdown, you've got Will Levis with him. Let's just see if we can jam in a lot of the studs. Let's go Pickett. We'll pick one out of Henry or Hopkins, and then let's grab Pickens or Johnson. Now, I'm completely fine with Pickens, but I've been using Johnson just because he's a little cheaper in this case. That can get you to Tajay Spears, get you to Boswell, Nick Folk. Can't quite get the Steelers defense. So if you throw Folk or Boswell in there, you're looking at a 4-2 here with Burks at captain, Levis, Pickett, Henry, Johnson, Folk. That's a more balanced build. So if you get to some of these lower end type dudes at the captain spot, that's going to open it up for you to really jam in a lot of these studs, get both quarterbacks, get guys like Hopkins and Henry in the lineup in your builds together. So what did I learn? I learned that this game is probably going to not be super fun, but there's some interesting elements to it because of the Will Levis upside. We could see another decent game out of him until the league kind of figures him out. With these rookie quarterbacks, he really doesn't have a ton of pressure on him. He's a rookie guy. He's replacing Tannehill. He's beat out Malik Willis. We've seen how well Malik Willis has played over the years. I feel like he can come out and have a pretty decent game. If he throws for 200 yards and a touchdown, you're probably going to need him in that flex. To me, this is a 27-20 game in favor of the Titans. If the Steelers can't fix things offensively, they can't get things going, I think that this is a solid win. The one way I see the Steelers coming out and winning this game is if they put a lot of pressure on the rookie quarterback up front and get some sacks involved there. So keep an eye on playing some of this defense. I think both kickers are in play. I do think that even the Titans defense is in play a little bit, but tonight it's going to be hard to get unique lineups, I feel like. So if you go more of these 5-1s, 2-4s, 4-2s, that's the way to go in my opinion. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me here. Throw us a like right off the bat. Congratulate Ellie on his wedding. He'll hopefully be back for Sunday Night Football, but he will. I'm pretty sure he'll be back for Monday for that paid show that you guys are for members. Appreciate you guys hanging with me. We'll see you guys in a few days.